to Turkey because we know that the dude is highly paranoid. And we also know that even though he talked about peace, even though he offered talks, but at the same time, we can all see that he doesn't need that. It's not part of his strategy. So I think we should not be very optimistic about this one. Of course, Trump was extremely happy about this. I think he also even mentioned that he was down to going to Turkey himself or something like that. But whatever he says, I think we should estimate from several positions. One is that he's strange, and second is that he's very, very transactional. Currently, all we do is fighting for his brain as if he doesn't control it himself, hoping that good cockroaches in his head will win over bad cockroaches, hoping that, we will be more vocal than all the imbeciles who surround him. And I'm talking about Witkov, J.D. Vance, and other more open supporters of the Russian terrorism, Elon Musk, etc., etc. So we hope that good cockroaches will win over the bad cockroaches. But unfortunately, I think it's not the case because we don't have a person from Ukraine who will be, taking care after Mr. Trump and talk to Mr. Trump 24/7, explaining him the situation, telling him the history of Ukraine, why Russia decided to attack, because he still considers Putin being his good friend who admires Mr. Donald Trump, which is not the case.
So, just a quick reminder, we had a delay in the start. Today with me is Operator Starsky on the stream. My name is Pavlo Shtelmakh, and we're discussing the negotiations in Turkey, the surprise ones, because no one waited for them. Mr. Aggressor Man Putin invited Mr. Zelensky to Istanbul for the meeting, and then he went back. He decided not to go. So tomorrow we can see the people he was talking about, Mr. Kit Kellogg and Steve Witkoff, the envoys. I believe the good policeman and the bad policeman in this duel, because both are advisors to Trump and special envoys. For some reason, Mr. Witkoff, the Middle East envoy, goes to Moscow more often to the Middle East, but I believe that's the details. So tomorrow Zelensky could meet both of them and Erdogan, and not Putin or any representative of Russia. Just as before we were starting this stream, I read the news that Zelensky did not want to start negotiations, direct ones with Russia, but Kit Kellogg and Witkoff, they persuaded Zelensky to come because if Russia didn't come to those negotiations, and they probably won't, it will portray them in like a bad negative frame before Trump and other people, and end of quote, it will bear consequences. So it was a quote from Witkoff, I believe, in the publication. It will bear consequences for Russia. What consequences? Maybe sanctions, real ones, but why we cannot impose them right now? That's another open question.
Because 2025, more than 3 years passed since Russia invaded Ukraine, and we are talking about full-scale invasion. We're not even mentioning 8 years of hybrid occupation of big chunk of Ukraine that took place before that, and people still cannot decide. Maybe Russia is not really an aggressor. Maybe they were misunderstood. Maybe we should give them some more chance. While Putin basically plays this, I'm not sure how to translate it properly in English, this slabo game, like
Chicken,
chicken.
chicken, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, chicken. Exactly. He's like, uh, Are you too chicken to come to Turkey and talk? Well, I am not there. Zelensky is like, of course I'm not chicken. Okay, I will come and show that you are just, you don't respect your own
Your
words.
own words once again and again.
Yeah, and okay, I will come. So next, he will propose some other version of chicken. Like, okay, let's meet in like Saudi Arabia this time.
Mm.
I will not come anyways, but let's meet. He will say, okay, I I'm asking myself, what what else do we need to prove that Putin is an aggressor who doesn't respect his own agreements? I have no idea. Of course, we can play this game. I'm sure that President Zelensky is extremely patient. Okay, he can fly to Arab Emirates, he can fly to Turkey, he can fly to Seoul, he can fly to Australia, wherever Russians offer to, to all those negotiations that again will never happen. He will go. I guarantee, right? It's not that hard. But how many else tries, how many else facts, I don't know, we should present to specifically to
Mm.
this White House, which is, in my personal opinion, I don't know if people will get mad at me, but I will share my personal opinion. I think is the worst administration ever. I'm not sure how many proofs we need to bring them to, so they would believe that, oh, actually, President Putin is not really fond of Trump. He doesn't respect him and he doesn't care about peace. I don't know what should happen. Sorry for the rant, but what's your take on that, by the way?
Uh, yeah, he obviously doesn't like Mr. Trump, the president of the United States of America. I remember a recorded conversation, and it is documented. In 2019, the two had a conversation on a G20 summit in Osaka, if I'm correct. Donald Trump was speaking to Putin, like in public, they were sitting together, and Putin was bragging about their new hypersonic missiles, I believe Kinzhal. So the ones that were shot down by Patriot air defense system numerous times in Ukraine. And Trump reiterated, "Oh, I would like to have those missiles too, like to have the same weaponry to, I don't know, project power together and bring balance to the force." And Putin replied, "Oh, you will have them. Like, I will hit you with those missiles." And so it was a silent moment. I believe the interpreters, the translators tried to fix it like slightly, but it is a documented moment. It was like a dark joke. So he's obviously not a friend, but yeah, maybe their styles are a little bit similar. So they based on authority, based on strong will. I believe, if someone can imagine, Putin has a strong will. Yeah. So basically, it's just like that. They are more individualistic. So yeah, not joined, but not like democratic ones. I'm trying just to say the correct words about the White House administration. It is a democracy, still a democratically elected government, but their style of administration is very similar to those we see in authoritarian countries right now.
Yeah, yeah, I noticed that. I'm just, trying not to criticize it much because, people are getting mad so easily these days. But yeah, I completely agree with you. I think I remember that conversation, and generally speaking, it's hard not to notice that Putin is literally a maniac. I don't know what sort of joke is that? How can you talk like this in the diplomatic environment to other countries, to representatives of other countries, especially superpower countries? But that is so, so Putin style. This
Mm-hmm.
open, half disguised KGB threatening.
Threaten,
Yeah.
yeah. So being dominative, I believe. Uh, I was once working on a documentary about Putin, and about Saint Petersburg streets, street gangs, everything like that. Authority that you have to like dominate, and times were different. Times were different. Even in Kiev, Ukraine, people from one district could not easily walk into another district. I mean, young men, because there were questions raised about the territory, about who you are, why you're wandering here, and who the hell are you? And there's a fist fight, you know. It was much worse in St. Petersburg. The crime was on the rise when he was getting brought up, and I believe that influenced the whole history of humanity because of all the wars, of the conflicts, and everything what happened since he became president of Russia is unbelievably much. So it changed the course of the world history, I believe, in a similar way as the rejection of Mr. Adolf Hitler from our school changed him.
Yeah, I guess so. And what's interesting is that this style of leadership, if we can call it this way, it was so much adopted by Russian so-called elites, the way they lie, the way they produce disinformation and basically rewrite history. Um, you can see the example of, Putin's management in every single Russian representative of local authorities, every single Russian official. They have it, you know. Always deny when you are accused. For example, recently, International Civil Aviation Organization,
Mm-hmm.
which is I don't know what to compare it to. It's basically the top organization managing the aviation itself in the world. It recognized Russia um, guilty of killing almost 300 people on board of MH17 in 2014. 11 long years there was a bunch of investigations conducted. The results of those investigations were presented to European public and stuff. And finally, 11 years after that, the ICAO recognized Russia as a country that actually destroyed this aircraft, killing those people. Of course, it means that Russia must pay reparations, must compensate the deaths. Of course, Russia will not do it, but Russians until this day keep denying the fact, even though the facts are over there. They were presented to everybody. It was like in Bucha, you can bring 1,000 journalists from every single continent of the world, and they will document every single case of Russian crime, but Russians will keep saying that no, it's not us. And the same in the case with MH17, and the same with any other case of Russian atrocities in Ukraine or against any other country. They will deny everything because this is what they are being taught in KGB schools back in the days, back in the Soviet Union. And they were raised this way that you have to deny everything, no matter how solid the proofs are against you, even if they catch you in the bed with your best friend's wife. deny everything, deny that you know this woman, deny that anything happened between you two, deny that you are you, you know,
And
deny, deny, deny.
yeah, and all the journalists of the world will see that, and then you must make a movie about it. Deny, like with the Bucha movie that Russia first launched, and then Ukraine filmed another one to try to counter that. But the Central Asia, Asian countries, I believe China, North Korea, they all saw the Russian version of the film, and really we are working informationally right now, information war front in Latin America and Brazil, in Africa, but still not so much in Asia. Just a quick remark, deny everything. I remember there was a series about Donald Trump where it's his favorite tactic: always deny, always say no. And this was not supposed to be a stream for comparison about Putin and Trump, but I mean, we we end up there, so we're comparing the styles so much. Yeah, and about the information war and Brazil, today, Lula of Brazil, Mr. President, promised to talk to Putin and make him meet Zelensky in Istanbul. Lula's plane was in Moscow airport for 3 hours and left without him leaving the plane, as much as I could read. I believe Vladimir Putin rejected meeting with him because he decided what to do already. And no one of the friends and allies of that country could really influence that. Maybe, perhaps only China has a vote in that because of the enormous trade and enormous support for the Russian economy that comes from the Oriental Empire.
Pretty much so, and it seems to me, so naive for people to think that they can just, I don't know, tell Putin what to do. The only situation this can actually work is if you give Ukraine several thousand Abrams tanks and long-range missiles, preferably ballistic missiles, and several million drones. And only then I think this will work. Only if all that is deployed to Ukraine's territory. So
And only
Russia.
in a couple of months and maybe even half a year, because weapons are good, but you have to plan and implement operations with them. And each day of the war is lives of military men, of civilians. And right now in Sumy, there's a tragedy again with several people being killed, and just at this moment as we're speaking. So yeah.
I don't know, every single time some kind of disaster, some kind of atrocity really happens in Ukraine, like the one in Kryvyi, in Sumy, in Kharkiv, Dnipro, every single time it's as if the world just ignores it, especially White House. Russians talk more about it actually, because Russians need to justify their crimes somehow. They say that, those 9 kids that were killed in Kryvyi Rih, they were actually like international mercenaries or something like that. But United States, they just ignore, as if it never happened. And it's actually really, really sad. It's really sad that we have to raise awareness about this every single time. If we talk about Kherson, I don't remember a lot of journalists coming to Kherson where Russians actually commit crimes against humanity, where they have this so-called human safari, and they basically hunt civilians with FPV drones, with drones that drop charges, and not a lot of journalists talk about it, actually. People would rather prefer discussing Trump, which I agree is very addictive process, but seriously, I think we're all a bit too tired from this. Then talking about things that people go through every single day. There's so much footage available online on Russians literally dropping charges on kids in Kherson, striking people with FPV drones, attacking civilian cars, attacking civilian apartment buildings. And people prefer just not to notice it. Remember like one time international community talked a lot about, for example, Aleppo, that was completely bombed. It was bombed throughout by Russian aviation, killing thousands and thousands of Syrian civilians that were, again, killed by Russian weapons back in those days. And then eventually, international community abandoned talking about Aleppo because it doesn't feel good, because if you talk about stress every single day, it doesn't feel good. We don't like to think about bad things. It's demoralizing,
Mm.
right? And unfortunately, I can see that similar thing can happen to Ukraine. There is a risk, actually. There is a risk that this may happen, but luckily to us, too many people talk about Ukraine today, and unfortunately for us, Russia understands that Russians need to talk about Ukraine more than anybody else, but in their own way.
You know what's the difference with Aleppo and with Ukraine is it was a one-way battle in Syria. Syrians could not fight back against Russian bombs and aviation, and we shut them down. So you have to talk it just to preserve your image, and the process of Ukraine being forgotten in the media. I believe we are passed through that when the Gaza war started, and with that Syrian gambit, the 2 weeks that changed the regime in Syria, that was cemented. Everyone said it was unbelievably impossible to overthrow Assad. It happened in 2 or 3 weeks, like 2 to 3 weeks. You know the guy who said that too. But now it is real, and they just cannot shut up about us, and I mean the Russians. And the world media, they remember it, they return to it because it's part of the image of, again, Donald Trump. It was his promise to end the war. To end the war in 24 hours after inauguration. We have more than 100 days right now, and I believe he did not clarify which 24 hours in the end. It's not so easy. It's not so easy when one side doesn't want to end that. I believe that our authorities, our administration would end the war instantly if there were the possibility just to end it and stop the killing. Just figure out everything else later, but right now, to stop the everyday killing and destruction of our own country, I believe that is possible from our side, but not from that side.
I agree with you 100%. Why it's so much possible from Ukraine's side is because Ukrainians want to live. We don't want to die because we want to survive. And if the killing stops, if the Russians stop shooting, then we'll be fine, right? But Russians don't want that. Russians didn't attack Ukraine because they were so peaceful, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you do not stop invasions by preemptively invading other countries. It's a BS. Everybody understands that, and that is the reason why Putin doesn't need the ceasefire. Why it doesn't benefit him. His clock is ticking. Actually, a lot of experts say that already 2026 Russia will face plenty of challenges economically and militarily. They will face a lot of challenges, and he understands that he needs to keep pushing. And Russia can accept all those losses in terms of personnel, in terms of their tanks, but more in terms of the manpower, of course. They can accept all those losses if Russia steadily wins, like kilometer by kilometer in Ukraine, and manages to capture it all. The problem here is that it will take much more than 100 years for Russians and much more population than they can physically afford. So despite this fact, Russia keeps pushing as much and as fast as possible, trying to get as much land as possible. Because if there is a delay, if Ukrainians prepare their or reinforce their positions, if Ukrainians use any opportunity to receive more weaponry, to deploy more troops, deploy more vehicles, build more drones. It means that Russians will struggle killing us after that. It means that it will be much harder for them to kill us after such preparations. And Russians understand that they don't need that. Absolutely.
Well, that's the nature of them, I believe. And we were talking about journalists and Kherson. We know one guy, Kalen Robertson, the Irishman, who made an entire movie about drone hunts for people, drone safaris in Kherson, and I believe we can see it on YouTube and you viewers too. So be sure to check out his channel, Kalen Robertson. He's a friend of ours, a friend of Operator Starsky, a friend of mine. We worked for UETV for quite a time on Redline's show, if you remember that. Yeah, and he made an entire documentary about that. It got a little bit of attention, but that's all. It is not the mainstream, not the sense that people would like to talk in the mainstream media right now, but that's the way we work, and that's why we are required and needed the community. So you and our friends and we are doing, I believe, a very important job, and I'm really happy that we can do it effectively, really effectively here.
It's our debt. I would say I'm not sure how to translate it properly. This is what we
Duty,
have to
yeah,
do.
duty.
It's our duty. Yeah, that's the word. We have to do it. And the sad thing about all this is Russian state understands 100% how important the informational warfare is for Russia for reaching their geostrategical goals. Not a lot of governments around the world understand the necessity to combat that. And if we're talking about our team, we have a lot of volunteers. Me, you, a lot of Ukrainian and pro-Ukrainian YouTubers, people from Twitter, who debunk Russian disinformation, who actually help Ukraine win this informational war. But at the same time, we have this whole orcish horde of paid propagandists on the other side, and they work, of course, in much more pleasant conditions because they are motivated by extremely big sums of money. Team Pool asked for something like $100,000 for a video. Wasn't bad. So we need to make sure that other governments, other states, leaderships also understand the necessity to fight this war properly and actually understand that it's not just, you know, communication. It's a war. It's a warfare which uh, results in actual casualties. For example, 2014, the Russian informational warfare on the east of Ukraine resulted in thousands of deaths that Russia brought to Ukraine. Literally, Russian language was one of the foundations that literally brought Russian tanks to Ukraine. So I really, really hope that other leaderships will understand the necessity to have some force within their country, or better, some collective force that will be fighting against Russian disinformation and brainwashing. Because the best way, of course, is to debunk this, is to expose Russian lies. It's done very easily. It's done very easily because the facts are out there, and only lazy person will not be searching for them to check the facts. But the problem is when you have this huge oil pipe that can be converted into money and then literally spent on propaganda and disinformation, you can be much more vocal than your enemies. And unfortunately, people will listen to those who speak louder instead of what is being spoken.
Yeah, and NAFO community, NAFO volunteers who made tens of races to Ukraine, they were started as a joke, as an internet meme, and now the guys are here based in Kiev. It is a volunteer group. It's one of the most remarkable and iconic meme groups and volunteer groups in the world right now, I believe. The 69 Sniffing Brigade. I got a patch somewhere there, which they gave as a gift for me when I was filming a report for UETV last winter. And also, we have our first comment. I mean, my first comment on the streams on the channel. It's Mr. Ohms. I hope you're still watching us. And he or she is noting that Romania is now at a weird spot and we should pay attention to that. Yes, I believe I started noticing that on Reddit there's hundreds and thousands of publications of pro-European protests in Romania. I almost said Hungary. I'm sorry, it's Orban syndrome. Yeah, in Romania. Um, I believe because of the presidential elections and the possible anti-European stance of the candidates, one specific candidate, and the emergence of the third friend of Putin in European Union and NATO, we have Orban and Fico, as noted before, and just today we were making an entire topic in the daily news about that, about new scandals with Orban, of course. What else? Our audience uh, really likes to see what's happening there in the land of Orban, while Hungarians are more than confident in supporting Ukraine. The policies and the statements sometimes they are really strange, at least for me. And we have in Romania these protests, which I believe will bear fruit because I don't have a feeling that Romania can become anti-European. So I personally don't see that potential right there for the third Orban in Europe. What do you think about that?
I think it's possible, unfortunately, and we can see, for example, White House. We can see Elon Musk calling AfD in Germany, saying that this extremist organization, that, by the way, was recognized as extremist recently in Germany, that they are the only hope for German people. We can see Trump meeting with not extremely far right or far wing representatives of uh, politicians in Poland, but that's one of the presidential candidates, and they become increasingly hostile to Ukraine. I'm talking about peace. Um, the Polish party. Why do they support all the wrong guys?
Mm-hmm.
Why does the current administration in the United States support all the wrong guys? I have no idea, but you can see the tendency that in European countries, for example, there's plenty of marginal movements that become more and more popular. Again, Fico, Orban, and other extreme right guys who become more and more popular for reasons that are very, very hard to explain, but the rhetorics are very, very similar. There are those guys that want to kill us. We all must unite and fight against them. Let's stop spending on people from a different country. We have our own problems that, require a lot of attention and finances and stuff. There's Haitian eating our pets, our
Hmm.
dogs and cats, things like that. And this rhetoric, I think I kind of understand where it comes from because there is Paul Manafort, for example, a very much known in specific circles,
Hmm.
person that was responsible for communications back in the days of Yanukovych in Ukraine and all that communication infrastructure, I would even say ecosystem that they have, the pro-Russian ecosystem. It's more or less the same among all of those marginal or far right parties that become increasingly popular. So I don't want to seem paranoid. Maybe I am, but we all understand who will benefit, and we all know the name of this country, who will benefit from Europe being completely
And
destabilized. And
divided.
yes, yes, that's the word.
Yeah, I actually had a research paper on what you're talking about. It's basic instinct, our people and the other people, so friends versus enemies, and like relative versus foe. It's as old as the world itself. This socialization. Oh, that's a nice cup you have. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, very much.
So for the camera, yeah, really a nice one. Uh, and those instincts, they are evoked by populist politicians, and they are evoked for the Russian money. I believe there are plenty of evidence right now, and Poland has even closed one of the Russian consulates after the investigation of their fault and their direct involvement in a big fire that took place in a trade center and supermarket in Poland. So hybrid warfare has been going on for a decade, I believe, soon, right now, since 2014, like direct hybrid warfare against Europe. Mm, Europe is target number one, absolutely, right now for the aggression, because there's a little funny perspective. If you're sitting in Moscow and you try to turn the map, the globe, like clockwise, and the only offense way, what you see is Europe. It like lies for your hands to grab. It's even psychological. I was shocked to see that perspective. It was a caricature from Cold War times, and when the Eastern Bloc and USSR was really near to the Western Bloc, to NATO. But in reality, that's number one goal for the ones that are sitting there. Far East, Asia, Africa, those are secondary and thirdly goals after all of us. We're not talking about Ukraine only.
Absolutely. And there are clear military objectives. For example, like taking Baltic states, capturing Poland, capturing Eastern Germany one more time. We all understand that Putin wants to restore the terrorist empire within its borders prior to 1991. And there's also different benefits from regaining control of those countries because Russia used the terrain, the features of the terrain, for example, like Carpathian Mountains in the West Ukraine, in order to reinforce its defense, its layers of defense for the very for Russia, okay, not for
Yeah.
the occupied republics or states, but also for Russia itself. And um, there are different resources that even Stalin considered fighting for, because if we're talking about Sweden, it's, for example, the steel, Swedish steel. We're talking about Romania as well. We're talking about oil. Um, Romania opens a way to countries like Czechia and further to the west, which is very convenient to have access to. And I think that Putin already understands the necessity to prepare future generations that will be trying to invade those territories. And he does that because if we take a look at all those Russian military camps for kids that they organized, and
Unarmia.
Unarmia, yes, that's basically Russian version of Putlerjugend. They have plenty of military camps that they established. There are military camps on the territory of Crimea. There are military camps on the territory of Russia itself. And unfortunately, they also bring Ukrainian kids to those camps to indoctrinate them, to teach them how to use weapons, how to, teach them basics of tactics, basics of coordination in frames of a unit, in frames of a squad or platoon. And they teach them those things that children should not know, actually. In my personal opinion, as a military,
Hmm.
I believe that children should not know even about those things, because you don't teach your kids how to kill.
And that's absolutely not what human beings should be doing to other human beings at any point. And we have war as a phenomenon. It's a phenomena in philosophy for thousands of years. As of now, I believe the earliest war recorded was the Trojan War in literature, in my memory. And we are having wars as the social and economic factor of development for a very, very long time. It's like part of our human being, human existence. It's part of that. But anyway, we should not do that in the world of globalization. Okay, you need war, do an economic war, some trade wars, yes, maybe competitions, sport ones, but there's really no physical reason to be killing and destroying each other and each other's countries just for the sake of it. Yeah, here we in Ukraine we are defending ourselves, and one of my close friends once said, "I don't really believe it was before the full-scale invasion. I don't really believe that if Russian conscripts are sent to Ukraine, that it will open fire because we are made of flesh and blood, the same as them, and no matter the language, the face, I believe they are people too." And after some time, he said, "No, they're not humans. They're not humans. They're here to kill." He had an experience with that, to say the least. And they changed, and the person that I knew was unbelievable. We all changed. I mean, I was still a student, a kid when the full-scale war started, and right now I really don't remember when I grew up and became this, I believe, mature and so focused on the things that are not really kiddish.
You know, the biggest difference between Russia and any given European country, civilized country, is that imagine a war between, for example, France and Belgium, okay? Imagine that within a year of war, both countries lost, okay, 100,000 people. Can you imagine the consequence in any of those countries, in France or in Belgium? Can you imagine the consequence, the social consequence? They would probably remove their governments easily after that. Why? Because people who grew on the civilized West, in the civilized Western country, um, which is much more wealthier than any given, I don't know, Russian territory, Russian cities cannot be compared, of course, to European cities. But people who grew up there, they understand value of democracy, of wealth, of well-being, and the value of their own freedoms. So they understand that in Russia, which is an empire, the only way for an empire to remain intact is to invade other countries,
To expand.
uh, to expand, exactly. And people there, they don't know what wealth really is. Of course, we're not talking about the corrupted Russian elites, but general public, they lived in poverty their whole life. And all this life was based on violence. It's retransmitting violence from people who committed against you onto other people. You commit this violence against. That is like a circle of life and death in Russia, literally. Violence coming from and to. Because this is the foundation of this state, if we can call it this way.
Mhm.
This is what the KGB's leadership taught Russians. This is how they taught them how to behave. This is what makes them Russian. This is basically Russian mir as it is.
Russian mentality.
Yeah, circle of violence. And unfortunately, there is such a huge gap between European mentality and Russian mentality, which, uh, of course, Europeans are much softer than Russians in this regard. Russians are much more violent, they much more atrocious. At the same time, um, at the same time, why I respect Europeans is because of this very fact. They don't consider violence the only way. They understand that you can only protect each other collectively. You can only reach success by exchanging the knowledge, the experience, exchanging your values and learning the best from each other. And this is why I respect our European brothers and sisters so much. Those who compare us to Russians, I consider them imbeciles because, unfortunately, for Russians, we are not their brothers. We are like distant relatives, like everyone on this planet, but we are not their brothers. Guys, please don't compare Ukrainians and Russians because it sounds very, very much insulting to Ukrainians. Ukrainians are not stealing toilets. We don't rape toddlers. We don't
Hmm.
murder civilians. We are different, okay? We are not maniacs. We don't commit atrocities. So please never compare Ukrainians to Russians. It's just wrong.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And, you know, it's not like Ukraine is part of Russia topic and anything like that. Ukraine was part of the Russian Empire. It was a conquered land and colonized one. It never was a brethren people with the Moscow Empire. It's part of the informational campaign right now to portray like Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia like one people, and we should join and everything like that. It worked for a long time. And for a long time it worked. It stopped working now. I believe not for everyone, but for many people. And each soul, each heart that thinks differently from that is our victory, is our small victory personally of me and you, Andrei. And actually, a big shout out to our audience that is now commenting the live stream. A shout out to our friend from Finland, I believe Patskuli. Yeah. Uh, and actually, Pasha and Pavlo are my names in Ukrainian. Another comment. Thank you for, for the activity, and a big shout out to Denmark for being the first ones to invent a scheme of developing weapons and producing weapons in Ukraine for European money, like Bogdana howitzers, almost entirely financed by Denmark right now. Another Sweden, Finland, Norway, the Baltic states, they all joined this initiative, and it is a great sense of unity. Personally, with the Baltics, the Nordics, Finnish people, Estonians, and everyone else right now. The closer you to Russia, the more friends you are, I believe.
Yeah, the more you understand the necessity to stay strong and stay together, except one atrocious and horrible neighbor that we are unlikely to have, together. Um, but at the same time, even looking at France, for example, France that is comparably further from Russian border, right? Even the leadership in France understands the threat. Italy, same stuff, because Prime Minister of Italy also has clear understanding of Russian threat of the Russian terrorism. So, I would not call the information warfare completely lost here. Still, we have incredible community of active people who actively fight against Russian disinformation, and we have incredibly huge and strong community of beautiful people watching us right now, for example, who comment, who share content, who also participate, and this is very, very important. I would really wish, Joe Rogan had less people watching his stream than, for example, other pro-Ukrainian or Ukrainian YouTubers with
Mm-hmm.
really legit content. People living in Ukraine, people talking about their everyday's life there, people streaming during the air strikes, and people reporting from the ground. And also people from the heart of Europe, people who actually deliver their information, who explain how Russian disinformation works in European country. Wish they were more popular than a dude talking about UFOs and distant civilizations. But we all understand why it happens this way, because this is human nature,
Yeah.
actually. We cannot change it.
And I always say that some people are creating content for the chosen ones, for the intellectuals, for the ones who really choose what to do and who to support. And you, me, and the community, like Anna from Ukraine, Artur Reichi, and Silicon Curtain, Mr. Jonathan Fink, and everybody else. Uh, it's our community. It's us basically. We are the big, how you say, the big collective Ukrainian blogger. And you all are in my research paper. I presented our community during an international science conference as the means of influence in media space, in social media, as effective means of influence. And uh, it's a great job, and I believe it will grow exponentially. Maybe you will be the new Joe Rogan, sitting somewhere, somewhere in the studio with the new billionaires of the world, and talking about UFOs. Yeah.
I would really love that. First of all, I'm flattered to be part of your research. And I would really love that. We do talk to intellectual people. It's a fact. We talk to people who know who use their brain, who use their critical thinking, who check facts. I agree with you 100%. At the same time, there's plenty of, for example, pro-Russian paid propagandists who literally create content for imbeciles. But imbeciles can vote. I would love to be an alternative Joe Rogan. I would like to create content for imbeciles. I lack experience just a bit, because I used to talk to sane people, to sober people, right?
Hmm.
Sober-minded people. But I would definitely love that. In the army, you never have like universal soldiers. Okay, I
Hmm.
was a sergeant for several years, and our sergeant major taught us that, my friends, you will never have perfect soldiers in your squad, in your platoon, in your company. They will never be perfect. Okay, there will be all sorts of people, good people, very bad people. There
Hmm.
will be young people, there will be very old people. There will be all kinds of soldiers, and your task as a sergeant is to unite them into a combat worthy unit.
To make the perfect unit out of imperfect people.
Absolutely, because we are all imperfect. Let's be honest. Everyone is
Hmm.
imperfect. And, you know, it saved us so much frustration, actually, and so much nerves, because when you see a guy who literally uh, came to the base late, or he was like brought by police because he was um, committing a crime of drunk driving,
Oh.
and you have to somehow educate this person, and you run to your sergeant, your sergeant major, for example. You wanna cry, okay, and you wanna tell him, sir, can we please remove this person? We don't need this one.
Hmm.
He will say, you're doing your job wrong, sergeant. Why don't you make this person a proper soldier? Why don't you educate this one? Because you will never have 100% perfect personnel in your squad or your platoon or your company. And that is when you start to understand that this is actually an extremely important and extremely tough job to manage those people, actually, and manage that personnel as a sergeant. So um, I think we need more sergeants in our um,
In our army.
communication team. Yeah, in our informational army. I
Hmm.
think we need more soldiers more sergeants that can turn it into a combat worthy force.
That's really, I don't know how to say it. There's a revelation for me about sergeants, and just as you said, it's a good mentor, a manager, a sergeant in the army. It's quite a long story, an interesting one of your military career. I believe we can talk on to that in our future streams or joint videos as far as it goes. As for today, what do you say? Maybe we can end the stream right now. We are talking for an hour right now. It was a nice talk.
Yeah, yeah, it was a pleasure, and I really liked that. And I would like to say big thanks for inviting me
Hmm.
here. Always a pleasure seeing you. Haven't talked to you in a while, and I already missed you, my friend. And also big thanks to everyone who watched our stream. One more time, we cannot only fight using officers. We need also sergeants and
Hmm.
soldiers as well. And doesn't matter if they're intellectual or not. Sometimes white trash and below are so good. when they're doing the proper thing. So thank you so
Yeah,
much.
and of course, thank you for the shout out in the community. I saw that. Very big thanks, and many people, I believe, in our stream right now are from there. And be sure to use this video. I can send it to you. You can publish it on, edit it, and publish on your channel. To have like a content unit, like a content shell. Let's go like that, a content javelin that we can use in our long information journey. So thank you again. Operator Starsky was with me on my personal channel, and we talked about a lot of things here. Thank you to you, to our audience, and to everyone else who's out there. Stay safe.
Thank you so much. Slava Ukraini.